Welcome to Leatherbrains, the podcast for fantasy football. Now, introducing your host, Hunter Slapdog Amoruso, and Matthew Scotty Holtmeyer.
And we are live, baby. Welcome in to Leatherbrains. As always, your hostess with the mostest, Slapdog here. And I am joined by my very hairy, my very scary, and my very intelligent-looking friend, Yeti. Yeti, how you doing today, brother?
Good, man. You know, just staying warm over here with this long-ass beard. You know, feeling all smart. Excited to talk about football, man. We got a lot to talk about this week.
We do. And I think, much like last week, this is going to be some good conversation because unlike last week, there's been quite a bit of running back movement throughout the NFL. And I think that all the brainiacs out there are going to want to hear what we have to say when it comes to both the fantasy football implications as well as the NFL implications for these running backs that have moved. And then we've also got some cleanup from last week. There's been some more free agency movement. There's been a quarterback signing, and then some other wide receiver movement that I think is worth discussing, like I said, for both fantasy and NFL purposes. So we got a lot to talk about, Yeti. You ready to get down to business, brother?
Yeah, man. Let's get our brainiacs informed.
Woo, here we go.
Let's get down to business.
First piece of news, and something I'm pretty excited about. We have quarterback Jacoby Brissett. He signed a one-year deal with the Commanders. $10 million deal with $8 million guaranteed. I was hoping Jacoby was coming to the Cardinals because Kyler Murray's probably not going to be ready. It doesn't look like that's going to be the case. What were your thoughts when Jacoby signed with the Commanders?
You know, this news actually broke last week when we were recording, and we were just talking about how Brissett would be a perfect fit for the Commanders. So I like to think that we broke this news. You know, I think, you know, all props to Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport for reporting it, but we actually spoke it into existence right before it happened. But, as far as like NFL purposes, I think Jacoby Brissett is a perfect fit for this offense, man. Fantasy wise, Brissett isn't going to be like a guy that you're going to draft very highly, obviously, but to have a quarterback better than Taylor Heineke in that offense or better than Sam Howell even is an immediate upgrade for their wide receiver room. So guys like Scary Terry, Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel, those guys, their stock is going to go up a little bit more because we've seen what they can do with Carson Wentz, Taylor Heineke. Now Jacoby Brissett is a huge upgrade.
I agree completely. There's some speculation in both NFL and fantasy groups across the Twitterverse. You think Sam Howell's going to be the starter here, or do you think it's going to be Brissett?
I think it's got to be Brissett, man. Like, you don't bring a quarterback in for $10 million just to sit on the bench. You know, like, that's not ideal backup quarterback money. Now, if he signed for like a 3, 4, or 5 year deal, sure. But this is $10 million. Jacoby Brissett, he's an aging guy. You know, he's probably got a few years to play under his belt. Like, he doesn't want to sit. I think he's an immediate day one starter.
I think he is a huge upgrade over Howell as well. I mean, we saw what he did with the Browns last year. I was extremely hoping that he was going to end up with the Cardinals because Kyler Murray, as I mentioned, he's not going to be ready. He looked really good last year with the Browns. I mean, he was able to move out of the pocket. He was throwing the ball pretty dang well, and he was making those checkdowns as far as what I want to see from a quarterback. I'm not going to call him the cream of the crop and one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but he certainly is, a starting filler quarterback in this NFL right now. And so I like this move a lot. And the Commanders, Eric Bieniemy's there now. What's he going to do with Brissett? And I'm not going to sit here and try and compare him to Patrick Mahomes because he's not, but he does have that mobile aspect to him that makes him a little bit more fun. So I'm excited to see how they utilize him in this offense. I do think it's a huge upgrade for all the wide receivers that you just mentioned for fantasy and NFL purposes. But we love fantasy football here. So it certainly helps me feel a little bit more at ease with Scary Terry shares as well as Jahan Dotson shares for sure. So I like this move quite a bit. Another move that I do like quite a bit here is the Cowboys. They signed Brandon Cooks to a deal, or rather they traded for him. They traded with the Texans. They gave up a 5th-round pick in 2023 and a 6th-round pick in 2024 to obtain Brandon Cooks. I see a lot of hate out there from Cowboys fans about this move, and it's somewhat perplexing to me. So what are your thoughts, Yeti?
I'm kind of surprised to hear that people are shitting on it or Cowboys fans aren't a fan of it because, they were looking at D-Hop. They were rumored to get D-Hop, which, yes, you can say D-Hop is a much better wide receiver than Brandon Cooks, but I feel like, honestly, Brandon Cooks is a better fit for this offense. And I say that because Brandon Cooks, he's going to be that speedster, high A-dot guy that goes down the field, and he's going to open up those looks for CeeDee Lamb, who plays out of the slot about 65% of the time. So Brandon Cooks, he has that ability to separate from the secondary. I think that's really going to elevate CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott's game because let's face it, last year, Dallas, they were struggling to find a consistent wide receiver too. They signed T.Y. Hilton. They were getting Michael Gallup back off of ACL surgery. They drafted
OBJ was rumored.
OBJ was rumored. Like they were struggling to find guys to fill that wide receiver 2 position. And now they get Brandon Cooks, who is, aside from last year, he has been Mr. Consistent, putting up over 1,000 receiving yards aside from last year, like I said. He's stepping into an offense that has a open 197 targets right now. I think Brandon Cooks he's going to be one of those guys that if his drafts position is low come August, September, he's going to be a popular guy. Perfect fit for this offense too.
Brandon Cooks is the epitome of what I would describe as a homie hopper. I mean, he has jumped from team to team and he has still found success. Like it's actually quite impressive when you think about it. I mean, aside from last year, he's I want to say it's over 1,000 yards every single year with every single he's been with. And it's like, dude, this guy can go anywhere and he still finds success. So while he's not DeAndre Hopkins, he's certainly worth his marbles for a 5th and 6th round. Like I love it for the Cowboys. I'm not a Cowboys fan. And in fact, I don't like the Cowboys, but I do like this for Brandon Cooks and his fantasy outlook, as well as everybody else on this team, because as you mentioned, they are struggling at the wide receiver role, and they have been aside from CeeDee Lamb. So I like this pick. What I have also seen in the frustration mills from a lot of Cowboys fans is the fact that they let Amari Cooper go for less, and so I don't know how you navigate that. I mean, there's some contract, conversation to be had in there as far as Cooper would have had to renegotiate a contract. Maybe they weren't willing to spend it. A 5th and 6th round is not a big ask, in my opinion, for somebody of Brandon Cooks' caliber. I understand you might be a little bit frustrated that you sold Amari Cooper at such a cheap price. That is frustrating. I sympathize with you there because Amari Cooper is still a very talented wide receiver, but we can only press forward. You got Brandon Cooks. You should be excited about that. And like I said, he is not DeAndre Hopkins. However, he is still a very clear upgrade from anything else that you have on this team.
Let me ask you a quick question. Would you rather have Brandon Cooks for the 5th and the 6th round pick or D-Hop for a potential 1st round, 2nd round pick?
As a Cardinals fan, I would love it if they gave up a 1st or 2nd round pick. But I mean, realistically, like it's Cooks because you're not giving up nearly as much, and your return of value may not be as high, but it's still significantly greater than what you currently had. So I think the disparity of the values there would be enough for me to take Cook over D-Hop. I do want D-Hop. I want him to go find a home. I'm a Cardinals fan. If you love something, set it free. I am setting him free. I do want him to go find a new home. I want it to be with Kansas City. To be completely honest with you, I would love that. I don't think it's realistically probably going to happen, but I want him to get a ring, and what better way to go chase it than in KC? So I'm hoping for that. Probably not going to happen. But the thing is I would take Cooks. I think the value there for what they got is not that crazy. Cooks wanted out from the Texans anyway, because as we know, the Texans are a complete dumpster fire. So he wanted out. I understand that. I sympathize with it, and I think they got a really good asking price for him.
And the Texans really fumbled the bag on Brandon Cooks by not trading him before he leaked all this information, man.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Another wide receiver signed instead of traded was Adam Thielen to a 3-year, $25 million contract with $14 million guaranteed with the Panthers. Dude, Adam Thielen's going to be like 35 still in the league. It's crazy to me. I'll give my thoughts and then I'm curious as to yours. Adam Thielen, I'm not going to put him in the wash category, but he's edging right on that, right on the brink of it. There was something that came out on our Twitter profile. It was a picture of Adam Thielen, a direct quote from him saying, "I feel like we could really win a Super Bowl here." Before we continue this, I do want to give a huge shout out to Adam Thielen's PR team because he did exactly what they told him to. They said, "We're going to go find any team that'll give you money, and then when you get there, you say these words, I feel like I could win a Super Bowl here. I know you don't believe it. Nobody in their damn mind believes it, but you say this because you're happy they paid you." That's about exactly how I read that. And kudos to him for getting the bag. But, man, this is just a rough look for the Panthers. I think they're looking for any – it's like the last group at dodgeball. So you're picking people, and then you're like, oh, these are the last guys left. I'll take Adam Thielen, I guess. So that's what they did, and that's how I look at it. I don't know how you do.
Yeah, man. Like you said, he's going to be 33 years old this year. So if he plays out his whole contract, he'll be 36 years old, which is old as shit. Even being 33 as a wide receiver,
yeah,
that's pretty rough because usually wide receivers fall off a cliff at the age of 30. It's like you said, hats off to his team for getting the bag on this one. But, Adam Thielen, he's kind of struggled to stay healthy. Last year was his first time staying healthy in 4 seasons. So I'm kind of curious how his health is going to look, considering that he is going to be a wide receiver 1 for Carolina, which is sad to say, but like that's the role that he's stepping into because Laviska Shenault is basically their only good wide receiver aside from Adam Thielen now. So it'll be interesting to watch. This
it will. And, Hayden Hurst is there and we'll touch on Miles Sanders in the big meat of the running back conversation, but it just feels like a hodgepodge group of dudes. Like that's how I look at the Panthers right now. And I feel bad for whatever quarterback gets drafted there because they're not like you sold DJ Moore. You sold a bunch of shit. You don't have a great outlook for the next couple years as far as rebuilding around your quarterback that you've chosen. So it's going to be tough. And Adam Thielen is not the answer. As you mentioned, he struggled to stay healthy. He was a good receiver, but I don't know if the Panthers have watched film on him in the last couple of years because if they did, they'd see that he was on the sideline. Because
maybe they were just like watching J-Jets and they're like, oh, nice. And then Adam Thielen.
Yeah, they might have got the numbers confused on the jersey. I don't know. But you know what? I'm happy for him. I think this is exactly what I expected out of the Panthers organization because they do some boneheaded shit like this. So kudos to him. Not wonderful for the Panthers.
I'm really confused as to what Carolina's doing because they're trying to they're signing all these veteran guys like Adam Thielen, Miles Sanders, Hayden Hurst, but it's like they want to get younger. They're trying to rebuild, but yet they're signing all these veteran guys, and it's like, are you trying to win now with the rookie quarterback or
That ain't going to happen. I think they're just, like I said, I think they're picking the last people left in dodgeball. That's how I look at this. And they're like, well, we do need a tight end and Hayden Hurst is available. So he's better than what we have. I guess we'll sign him. That's kind of how I look at it in a serious perspective. They're not going to do great. This whole team is not going to do great. I don't know what Frank Reich is doing. I don't know if it's him. I don't know if it's the front office. It's probably a medley of both, but I don't like the outlook of any of this team aside from maybe Miles Sanders, and we'll talk about that. But it's going to be a rough patch for them, I think, and they're going to have a couple years before they can even try and rebuild this thing, just due to the sheer amount of draft capital that they gave up for whatever quarterback they choose. So, in other news, the Texans signed the doctor, Mr. Schultz himself. Dalton Schultz signed a 1-year deal worth up to $9 million. I don't know if I care about this, to be honest with you. Yeti, why don't you give me your thoughts? I mean, I do, because especially with the departure of Brandon Cooks, hopefully maybe John Mechie will play. We really haven't seen anything from him, and he was, as I mentioned, he was a rookie last year, and he got cancer, so he was unable to play. Maybe he'll play this year. We'll see. You got Nico Collins, his team, and then you're going to have a rookie quarterback. So I think that the outlook could be nice for the doctor. We saw what he was with the Cowboys. The issue being, Dak did not really hyper target him like we had kind of hoped he would this year. But we know that the Schultz has done it before. So I think for those dump off routes, for whatever rookie quarterback they get, he could provide value there. But
bingo.
I mean, that's about the best that I see for him. And depending on what quarterback goes there, that's going to really change how I look at this as well.
I think regardless of what quarterback they get in the draft, I am a big fan of Dr. Schultz this season, man. And I'm not going to tell you to go draft him super high for fantasy, but look, the Houston, they have an open 357 targets in that offense with the departure of Brandon Cooks and other guys due to free agency. They're going to have a rookie quarterback, like you said, who's going to need a guy who's reliable, who's going to be their safety blanket. And what better person to do that than Dr. Schultz? Like, he is one of the best blocking and pass catching tight ends in the NFL. If you look at Pro Football Focus, he's top 3 for each category, which is pretty damn good for a tight end, obviously. So I think he's going to get peppered with targets, knowing that rookie quarterbacks are going to be struggling to read defenses, and he's probably going to be their second read right off the bat, and maybe even their first, because like you said, they don't have a wide receiver room. He's probably going to be their most talented route runner
probably
at this time. So I'm excited for Dr. Schultz, and I think he's going to be one of those guys that's going to benefit from game script as well when we talk about drafts coming up in August, September.
Yeah, I want to see. I still think that they have to do something with this wide receiver room. So I want to see how that progresses. I don't know if they actually will, because, and maybe there's a little bit of bias here because I see the name Texans on his uniform and I'm like, he's destined for sadness and despair. So let's see how this progresses. I agree with everything you said. Overall, I think he's not bad. Obviously, he's not a long-term solution for the Texans, but for like a redraft format, my mind was in the dynasty mode. But for redraft format, yeah, I think there's certainly value there. In a long-term format, I don't think his outlook is wonderful, but for next year, it potentially could be. So, and then another tight end, we have Mike Gesicki. He was signed by the Patriots, also to a 1-year deal, also around $9 million. So seems to be maybe the status quo for those tight ends who are kind of okay, but not incredible, but could be of value. I think I like the Schultz signing more personally. Mike Gesicki, he's kind of been an interesting story. When he was with the Dolphins, and it was him and Waddle, he had a lot of usability. Then they signed Tyreek Hill, they franchise tag Gesicki, and then you're like, oh man, they want to use him, right? Because he's traditionally more of that pass catching tight end. He's not like a big blocking tight end. He's somebody he's out in the slot, maybe running routes. That's kind of his role with the Dolphins. I kind of see him in like a Hunter Henry-esque role in this offense. They looked, and by they I mean Mac, not last year, but the year previous, looked to Hunter Henry a lot on the goal line. And for that reason, he kind of got a lot of touchdowns. I kind of see him in that role, maybe a little bit more extended, but that's going to really be determined on can Mac move the ball down the field.
Yeah, this signing kind of shit all over my Hunter Henry prediction last week because I was super high on Hunter Henry without Jonnu Smith in that offense. So I thought Hunter Henry would be the only tight end. But here we go. We know Bill Belichick fucking has a boner for double tight end sets. And he spends $9 million on Mike Gesicki, who last season, he only saw 50 targets in the Miami offense, which is, it's understandable considering all the weapons that they have. But it was by far career lowest amount of targets and catches last year. So I think he is due for, some positive improvement there as far as targets go, but it's just such a curious landing spot. Hunter Henry is he can block, yes, but he is also a pass catching guy who Mac Jones has rapport with. Mike Gesicki, he's not a blocker. He is a guy you take advantage of in the slot, just a very curious spot. And, our Leatherbrains Twitter account had posted out, what tight end do you prefer in PPR leagues, Mike Gesicki or Dalton Schultz? And as of this recording, Dalton Schultz was leading by 19% of the vote. So people tend to agree that Dr. Schultz signing is better than Gesicki.
And I agree with that. It was kind of a slap in the face this last year for Gesicki owners because while they had Tyreek Hill and Waddle, I figured maybe with defenses trying to key on both those guys, that it would be wide open and out to pasture with Gesicki, and it wasn't. They really didn't utilize him, and I'm like, why in the hell they franchise tag this guy if they're not even going to use him? But you know what? I'm not the Dolphins. I am not Mike McDaniels. Love the man. He's the weirdest guy in the world. But we'll see. We'll see. I tend to agree. I think the Schultz is much better signing than Gesicki is. But I think a lot of it has to do with situation as well. So, okay, Yeti. we're going to move on to the meat here. We are going to talk about the running backs. So we have kind of put these running backs in different tiers here because we have to. This is fantasy and NFL conversation, and these running backs are in different tiers as far as what the caliber of player that they are and what they're going to bring to the table. So we're going to kick this off with the first tier, tier 1, the top guys. Let's talk about Austin Ekeler, baby. Let's talk about Austin Ekeler. That man is freaking ripped. He is a scary looking dude. If you haven't seen it, he put some he put some pictures out on the Twitterverse out there. He's shirtless. He's in the gym. And I was like,
baby.
oh yeah. Like I have a little bit more of a man crush on him than I did. And I already loved him, but I was like, Jesus, dude, this guy is freaking jacked. But he's not getting paid enough, in his opinion, and that's one of his biggest frustrations. So I think this needs to be discussed here. He is not really a free agent, but he has requested a trade from the Chargers. So Ekeler and the Chargers, they have not made much progress in extension talks, but essentially, as I mentioned, Ekeler feels as if he is not getting paid enough for what he is doing for this team. And the Chargers, even when they said, hey, you know what? Go out there, go shop yourself. See what value you think you can get for yourself, and then come back home and we'll have some conversations about it. And it, a lot more conversation has not happened aside from that the public is aware of. So Ekeler has 1 year left on his current deal and a very reasonable cap hit of $7.75 million. So, he stated, I feel like there's no timeline on this. I'm so underpaid right now as far as my contract and what I contribute to the team. I am relentlessly pursuing this. I want something long-term, and I want a team who wants me long-term. I'm at the peak of my game. I'm getting half my value of what I can be getting. Let's talk about him. Let's talk about Austin Ekeler. What are your thoughts on this entire situation, my friend?
I think that last sentence in the quote you just read is pretty telling. He feels like he's getting half of what he deserves, which he's already making, almost $8 million a year. So if he's looking, if he's being serious and he wants to double that value, Christian McCaffrey is earning $16 million a year. Alvin Kamara is earning $15 million a year. And then you have Dalvin Cook, who's the next highest paid running back at $12.6 million a year. So it's hard for me to see any team paying that amount of money to sign Austin Ekeler. Mm-hmm. You could argue that Austin Ekeler is a product of the offense that he is in, because Justin Herbert, he's a check down king right now. He has the lowest A dot among starting quarterbacks in the league, and Austin Ekeler is Justin Herbert's first read usually, and that has something to do with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams struggling to stay healthy. But Austin Ekeler, he's not really he is a running back, obviously, but he's more of a slot guy, basically, that's in the backfield, in my opinion. And if he wants to get paid like a wide receiver, I don't think that's going to happen with the Chargers.
I don't either. And I do think at the end of the day, he will stay home. I don't think the Chargers can function without him. And I truly do believe that, because as you mentioned, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen have struggled to stay healthy. And unless they do something, they're both aging wide receiver assets. It's not like they're in their prime. And I'm not going to try and take anything away from either of those two guys, because they are talented wide receivers, but they are getting older. And we saw that this last year. They weren't on the field when the Chargers needed them. So who did they turn to? They turned to Austin Ekeler, because that's all that they had. So I don't think he goes anywhere. I do think he's worth a little bit more money just for what he's doing for this team. And so I sympathize with him in that regard. But I think we're going to see a very dynamic shift in the way that running backs are paid in the NFL in the next couple of years, because NFL teams are starting to learn you don't need to pay Ezekiel Elliott a fuck ton of money and get the job done. And I think that was a great example of, okay, we can get this done with another running back. Yes, was Zeke a really, really good running back? He was. Is he anymore? He's okay. He's not terrible, but he's not great. And he definitely was not worth the money that they were paying him, which is why they cut him. So I think teams are starting to realize, and I think we're going to see a lot more money shuffled to the wide receiver position over the next few years, because that's where teams are going. That's where teams are kind of transitioning to. We're starting to see the NFL is not just a smash mouth between the tackles league, and we've seen it over the last couple of years, right? But like it's starting to transition more into like that collegiate, like air raid type offenses that we're starting to see. So I think wide receivers are going to garner a lot more money throughout the years. In running backs, we're going to see less. Now, obviously, you've got your top tier guys, and Ekeler fits in that mold for me. But I still don't think he's going to get like insane value. He could probably squeeze out a couple more million. And I think the Chargers would probably, if he came back and he said, hey, look, they're offering me $10 million, the Chargers probably would swing that because I think that they don't have another choice. But I don't think he's going to go anywhere. I think they're going to try and come to terms. And he stated, it's nothing personal. He does like the Chargers, and the Chargers like him. He just wants to get paid more. So that's my take on it. And Eckler is a great running back. He is, especially for fantasy purposes. He's running back 1, running back 2. Like you're putting him right up there in the top tier guys, and that's why he's in our tier 1. But I don't see him going anywhere. I think ultimately he will stay home.
Yeah, and I think his situation would be a little bit different if he wasn't older than 27 years old. He's turning 28 in the middle of the season this year. So it's hard to argue that you deserve more money when you're almost 30 years old, when the shelf life on running backs is going downhill really fast. And I understand he's not like a Ezekiel Elliott type of guy who's going through the tackles every single play. But still, you're getting hit by some of the biggest dudes, D linemen and linebackers. That takes a wear on your body. And I don't want to jinx him, but he hasn't gotten a big injury yet. And who's to say that he's not going to fold in the next couple of years as he gets older with father time?
Do you think that might be why he's kind of like thinking about the future and he wants to go somewhere long term?
Man.
Okay.
Like I put myself in his shoes and I'm like, I know I probably have 2 to 3 years left of this productivity that I've had for the past 2 years. Like I need to go get a bag because I'm severely underpaid as it exists right now. When I look at guys like Christian McCaffrey, who I'm probably like a Christian McCaffrey light. I'm talking as Austin Eckler, but
you yourself are way above Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, I think so too. I should probably be worth like 18 million at least, but I feel like Austin Eckler feels like he should be in that same category as McCaffrey. And you could argue he does as far as his stats go and how much he means to the Chargers.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I think he stays home. I mean, do you think there's a chance he'll leave, or you think it's
I think he stays.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Saquon Barkley, another tier 1 guy. Yeti, you called it last year. You called the comeback that is Saquon Barkley, and we saw every bit of it. He looked incredible. He played incredible, and he was a key component for the Giants getting as far as they did in the playoffs. Like he was really, he was it. It was him and Danny Dimes. So they didn't come to terms with him. He wants to get paid. A lot of these running backs want to get paid, but as I mentioned, like I do think we're going to start to see a monumental shift in the pay structure of a lot of these guys. Saquon Barkley's still one of the best. He's still one of the best, and unfortunately, by they I mean the Giants. They came to a deal with Danny Dimes, and as soon as they did, they had like 3 minutes left, and they threw the tag right at Saquon Barkley. So he has been franchise tagged on a 1-year deal for $10 million guaranteed. This one's interesting to me, and I'm curious as to your thoughts, because either they're going to try and do some contract negotiations throughout the year to keep him long term, but I think he is another one of those guys that he's like, I want to get paid, and they maybe, depending upon what they do in continuation of this offseason and during the draft, maybe they look towards the future because they're not going to be willing to pay what he wants. And then maybe it might be a similar situation where he goes out, shops himself, can't find another team to give him a better offer, and he might stay home. What are your thoughts?
See, it's kind of hard because I'm in the boat myself that you shouldn't pay a lot of money for a running back. But when you have a guy like Saquon Barkley on an offense that Brian Daboll is running, I think he is a perfect fit for what Daboll is looking for. At this point, obviously, like he's been looking for a pass catching back when he was in Buffalo, and he finally gets that here in with the Giants. And we saw what Saquon did with the full year under his belt with Daboll. He's finally healthy, but he is turning 26 years old. So it's almost like with a 26-year-old guy like Saquon Barkley, who has a history of getting injured, you try to protect yourself, and maybe you do like a 2 to 3 year deal with a team option to try to mitigate those risks. But in my personal opinion, I do think they need to pay up for him, because they did sign Darren Waller, or they traded for Darren Waller. So that improved their pass catching weapons a little bit. But I think this offense is still going to go through Saquon Barkley, because that is Daniel Jones's, that's a safety blanket right there with Saquon. So I would not be surprised if they came to terms on a contract, but they do have until July to do so. So it'll be some back and forth for the next few months, but I expect him to be a Giant come August, September kickoff.
Okay. What about Josh Jacobs? your hometown hero guy, as our resident Raiders fan, Josh Jacobs was tagged, 1-year deal, $10 million, same thing as Saquon Barkley. So that's what the first franchise tag carries as far as pay is concerned. Josh Jacobs, man, he kind of came out of the woodworks this last year as a top tier running back. You know, he was kind of in one of those mid-level-esque roles as far as what he was doing and what he was able to produce. And then all of a sudden, he showed his true colors this last year, and he showed that he could carry this team and do a lot for this team on the ground. So as our Raiders aficionado and expert, what are your thoughts on this Jacobs signing?
You know, I don't know if I'm biased here, but I think Josh Jacobs has been one of the best running backs in the league since he stepped in and kind of claimed his starting role 4 or 5 years ago, man. He has been the heart and the soul of the Raiders offense for the past 5 years now. And I know there's been a lot of back and forth on Twitter and him with the media saying, you know, I want to, like, there's mixed feelings of him wanting to leave, but him wanting to stay. And I think they ultimately get a deal done with him because, as I mentioned, he is going to be the heart and the soul of this offense for another year with Jimmy G as quarterback.
So you don't think Jimmy G is going to be the heart and soul of this offense?
Oh, fuck no, man. I fully expect Josh Jacobs to see another 300 touches this year as a Raider. And honestly, I don't think he would get paid anymore with any other team. And I think, you know, I know the Raiders are going to struggle next year. Everybody knows that, but there is some appeal to playing for the Raiders. And I feel like Josh Jacobs realizes that not only the history with the Raiders, but they are in Las Vegas where there is no tax. So
well, there's also the hustlers.
For sure.
All of the playrooms for Jimmy G to go to. You could probably bring Josh Jacobs with him.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I'm sure Josh Jacobs would get some of that treatment too. Maybe he has already. Maybe
I'm sure he probably has. Maybe that's why he's like, yeah, I don't mind it here. Aside from, you know, as you mentioned, there's no tax for his money, so he gets to keep his money.
Yep.
There's also strippers there. So that's for me. Look, man, I'd hang out in Vegas if I was an NFL player. I'd be like, you know, it's not the worst place. It's not the worst place. And this is a nice brand new stadium too. So I've seen Iggy Azalea go a little crazy up in the the upper stage up there. So I think that, like I said, this is a really, it's not a good time to be a free agent running back because there are so many of them and teams aren't going to want to pay him. That's where they're at. So we'll see what happens. He's another guy that I'm like, man, I don't, especially for the Raiders, like I think there's a chance they could go into a rebuild. Like, I think that, you know, as we've kind of discussed on the podcast and off the podcast, Davante Adams is somebody that we've talked about. And you had stated, I think it was last episode, that if the Raiders aren't where they want to be halfway through the year, they're probably going to trade Adams and get some worth for him while they can. So, like, you do that. You've lost Waller. You have Jacoby Myers, who you signed, and that was interesting to me. He's probably one of the younger wide receivers that you'll have for a little bit. And then I think it was a 3-year deal. And then you've got Hunter Renfrow, who's also getting a little bit older. Jimmy G's not the long-term solution there. So, like, from an offensive perspective, you're going to have to do a very dynamic shift in what you're going to do in the next couple years because the current group of guys is not going to be around for a whole heck of a lot longer. If Josh Jacobs doesn't ask too much money, I could certainly see him still staying in that role, but it's going to be interesting for me to see. And I don't know, like I said, you're a resident Raiders fan. That's somebody from the outside looking in. Is that a fair thing to say, or do you disagree with me on any of that?
No, I agree with you 100%, man. You know, while I'm a diehard Raiders fan, I'm also a realist, and I fully expect this team to be under a rebuild in the next couple of years, or until McDaniels gets fired, basically.
What you're hoping for? I think most Raiders
I'm
kind of
praying for.
Okay,
every night, pray to
Raider get down gods. On your knees. You said, "Dear Jesus, thank you for another day on this earth, and please, please, please give McDaniels fired."
Amen, brother.
Amen. All right. We got Tony Pollard next up here, and he's the last person in our tier 1 discussion before we move down a tier. Tony Pollard, another franchise tag. Came out, smacked him right in the jeans. Tony Pollard, 1 year, $10 million guarantee. And the Cowboys released Zeke, as we mentioned just a minute ago. So they are leaving Pollard, Malik David, and Rico Dowdle. I've never even heard that name before. So the Cowboys in the market for another running back. Bijan Robinson question? What do you think?
Yeah, man. I'm Jerry Jones over here. You know, I get all excited when we talk about running backs, and I think Bijan, man. Whew. Bijan would get me going if he went to Dallas, man. I think that is the perfect landing spot for him.
I mean, we've talked about Bijan, and we're gonna talk at the end of the episode. I do want to talk about him for just a moment here, so I'm not gonna go down the whole Bijan rabbit hole at this moment, but we will. Would be a good place for him. It would be a really good place for him to end up because, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it because there's a couple of teams that are kind of shaping up to be in contention for him. But Tony Pollard, he got the tag. Tony Pollard was the better running back for this team, and we knew that. We knew that last year. We were saying that last year, and we saw it come to fruition throughout the year. And then, you know, they drove the stake in the ground here and said, hey, Tony, we want to keep you. We're going to get rid of Zeke here. But Tony Pollard, he screwed his leg up at the very end of the season. So is he going to be ready for the – I mean, is there some concerns there that he's going to be ready by week 1 for this team?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And before I could update our show notes, the Cowboys actually signed Ronald Jones to a very minimal deal. And while I don't expect Ronald Jones to really do anything in this offense, I think it might be a little sign that they don't expect Tony Pollard to, you know, be 100% correct for, you know, the first couple of weeks on the season. Which if I was a head coach, which I'm not, unfortunately,
you should be.
Yeah, I probably should be, but I would ease Tony Pollard into his normal workload. You know, it's a 17-game season now. Zeke is gone, and we can't give a guy who's coming off. I think he broke his tibia, something in his lower leg. So thankfully, it wasn't an ACL tear. But you know, still coming off a broken bone, it's going to be hard to recover from that, and you're going to ask him to carry the ball 200 times or touch it 300 times, including, you know, receptions. Like, that's just a lot to ask. So I fully expect them to either draft another running back, whether that's Bijan or somebody in the lower later rounds rather, or potentially sign another free agent, because there's a lot of guys out there right now. Like, you look at Leonard Fournette, he's a free agent still. Kareem Hunt, still a free agent. So there are other guys out there who could potentially get signed before training camp starts.
Yeah, and that's all those people that you mentioned that are still there. I'm really interested, and I think that's whenever the signings do happen, there are some teams that are still kind of like, what are we doing with the running back future? You've got the Eagles, you've got the Cowboys, and those are the main two that kind of come to mind. And you can see that very clearly with the contracts that they are signing for these one-year deals. So they're looking towards the future here. If one of those guys signs either Playoff Lenny or as you mentioned, Kareem Hunt to a deal, like a 2 or 3 year deal, that's going to really make a pivotal moment for that Bijan run, in my opinion. But before we move to this second tier of running backs, out of this first tier, we have Austin Eckler, Saquon, Josh Jacobs, and Tony Pollard. For fantasy purposes, which one are you most excited about moving into next season?
Oh God, I think if Austin Eckler stays with the Chargers, he's the obvious one. But aside from that, I would have to say Tony Pollard. I mean, we saw Tony Pollard finish inside the top 10 for running backs this year with Zeke. What's he going to do without Zeke? He's one of the most efficient running backs last year when he touched the ball. And, no Zeke now, he has a clear lane to RB5 status plus, in my opinion.
Yeah, the biggest concern for me would just be, when's he going to get healthy? And I think that answer is going to largely determine where he finishes for fantasy. So we're going to move to tier 2 here. We have Miles Sanders to kick things off here. Miles Sanders, baby, he signed you want to talk about the dodgeball kids that got picked last? Miles Sanders, he's going to be on this team for a while. He signed a 4-year deal, $25 million. I, for one, kind of like this. This was probably my favorite signing that the Panthers have done because it tells me a couple things. They're going to be running the ball because they're going to bring in a rookie quarterback. They have no one else. You got, Hayden Hurst and a Adam Thielen, who's going to be on the bench by week 4 because he broke his leg. Hey, so Miles Sanders is going to be a focal point in this offense, in my opinion. And his fantasy value, it's the Panthers. So they're not beautiful. It's not wonderful. But I will tell you, look what Chuba did last year. Look what their backup running backs did when they got rid of Christian McCaffrey. They actually were usable for fantasy. Miles Sanders is a better running back than those guys. And if he can stay healthy and if they utilize him, like I think that they will, he's going to have a lot of fantasy value on a really bad team because they're going to run the ball because they have no other choice because they don't have anybody else that they can give the ball to. So that's my thoughts towards this. And Miles Sanders, with that signing, he's going to be their guy for a while. That's what that signing tells me, is they are not going to really be doing anything crazy. They're not going to sign any other running backs or pick them up in the draft, rather. They're going to stick with Sanders. And they might, I think they still have Chuba as their RB2, but it's going to be Miles Sanders. So, he came from Philly, right? So he was the Philly running back. Philly signed Rashad Penny to a 1-year deal. And we talked about this, maybe Bijan, maybe playoff Lenny, maybe Kareem Hunt, maybe they'll go get one of these guys. But initially, he's no longer with the Eagles. He is now a Panther. What are you thinking about Miles Sanders?
Miles Sanders is one of those guys that really gets me excited in a new environment, because he is going to a team that is going to have a rookie quarterback. And you know what an offense is going to look like with a rookie quarterback. We're going to pound the rock. We're going to look for easy dump offs to the running back. We're going to look at tight end crosses. We're going to look at little drag routes, little easy completions, basically, for a rookie quarterback. And Miles Sanders, he's going into an offense with Frank Reich, who traditionally he loves to feed his running backs. You look at his run in Indy, Jonathan Taylor fed him the fucking rock, man. And I think Miles Sanders, he is more than capable of carrying the ball 200 times a season, 250 times a season, and he's got that cowbell status as of right now. I think Chuba, he's still going to be involved in this offense, obviously, but he's going to be that third down type of guy, where I hope Miles Sanders can improve upon, because with Philly, he really wasn't used in the receiving game at all. But in his first season, he had 78 receptions his first season as a rookie. And then he only had 46 between last year and 2021. So kind of a drop off. And that's an area I hope Frank Reich kind of improves upon, which if he does, Miles Sanders last year finished as running back 15 in PPR. I think it's possible that he finishes in that range or better next year with the Panthers.
Yeah, I like I said, I've pretty much said what I loved about him, and I am excited for him. But what about Penny? And I'm not putting Penny in this tier 2 category, because I think he's a tier under that. Rashad Penny has been great when he's on the field, but he's just struggled to be on the field. So, do you think this is for the Eagles? You think this is a situation where they're looking to start him, or this is more of a depth piece and they're going to continue to explore options? Or what are you thinking here? Because Boston Scott is still there as well.
I think Philly would be silly for not signing another running back.
That was good.
You like that?
Nice.
Yeah. Philly special.
Yeah.
But they'd be silly not to, because Rashad Penny, over the past 3 seasons, he's only played in 18 games out of a possible 49 games. Not great. We gave Christian McCaffrey a lot of shit last year for missing a lot of time, but look at Rashad Penny. He's going to be great for the 5 games that he plays, but what else are we going to get from him? But
100%.
When the dude's healthy, he's among one of the best running backs in the league. You look at his stats, 6 yards per carry, damn near, and he has 4.5 yards after contact, which leads the NFL in games that he's played in. But the problem is getting him on the field. So I think if Philly was smart, Rashad Penny is going to be one of those rotational guys. Get him in on first and second downs, and then get another guy like Boston Scott in on third down, or even take it series by series. Rashad Penny gets one series, and then you draft a running back or you sign another running back, and you just rotate them every series, because Rashad Penny can't shoulder the load anymore.
No, and that, like you said, that's very apparent with how much time he's missed. A guy who probably can shoulder the load here is David Montgomery. So D-Mont signed a 3-year deal with the Lions, $18 million with 11 guarantee. So Jamal Williams, he's gone. He went to the Saints, and we'll talk about that in a second. But he is no longer there for the Lions, and that leaves quite a big hole, because DeAndre Swift was slated to be the RB1 this last year, right? He struggled to stay healthy, and then he quote unquote came back, and then Dan Campbell took him out, and they went back in, and he took him out. And for fantasy managers, it was an absolute shit show. They were very frustrated, because it was, do I play Swift? Do I not play Swift? Should I drop Swift? Should I put him in as my it was all over the place. And then it turned out by the end of the year, Jamal Williams was just the guy. Like, if you had Jamal Williams, he was probably one of the greatest fantasy free agents of the year, and the waiver wire pickups. And he broke a record for touchdowns with the Lions. Like, he was electric. He's not there anymore, Yeti. So with David Montgomery coming in here and this contract for 3 years, is there any world in which him and Swift can coexist? Is this Monty's backfield? What are your where's your mind going with this whole signing?
My first thought when I saw the signing was DeAndre Swift is kind of just dead meat. And I love Swift because I think he's a talented back, but I think Dan Campbell knows that it's a struggle to keep him healthy, and he can't be a guy that touches the ball 250 times like Jamal Williams or even Demont, who has proven that he can touch the ball 250 times a season and he can be okay. David Montgomery, he's stepping into a running back room that has an open 304 carries with, like you had mentioned, Jamal Williams is no longer there, which is going to be obviously great for Demont. Demont he's a dramatic increase from Jamal Williams because not only is Demont a great guy between the tackles, he can also catch the ball, which I think that's kind of where Swift's bread and butter was last year with Jamal Williams. And I think Demont is going to be a guy that can play all 3 downs, whereas Jamal Williams, when he was on the field, you know what's going to happen. He's going to be pounding it first and second down. Swift is going to come in and catch a pass. So I think Demont he's going to fill that role, that Jamal Williams role, and even more. So if I had to pick between the 2 backs, obviously I'd pick David Montgomery all day between him and Williams, and even him and Swift at this point.
Yeah, I do think, especially with the contract, like that tells me at the very least he's probably going to be starting this year, and Swift is probably going to take more of a backseat role to this offense. So I'm telling you, Yeti, Lions are going to the playoffs, baby. They're doing it. That roster is starting to shape up pretty nicely, and they did some defensive additions there as well that they're going to be spicy, man. I'm saying it. Yeah. They are going to be a playoff team this year. Yeah. So, but David Montgomery's not for the Bears anymore. And another playoff contender that I think is certainly worth discussing, but they don't have David Montgomery as a running back anymore. We were on the Khalil Herbert train last year for a large portion of the year. And Khalil Herbert, in our opinion, or in my opinion, rather, and I think yours as well, Khalil Herbert was a better running back than David Montgomery.
Yep.
Like, he looks better. He's playing better. And then, he kind of had some injury issue that kind of took him on and off the field a little bit last year. So David Montgomery's not there anymore. They signed Foreman to a 1-year deal. Herbert's still there. In your opinion, is it going to be Foreman or Herbert in this backfield for the Bears offense?
I think this is Herbert's backfield to lose, honestly. Okay. I think Foreman's signing, it was very minimal, that 1-year deal, like you said. I think that's just to kind of cover if Khalil Herbert goes down again, because it's hard to for a guy that's coming off an injury to shoulder 250 carries like a Demont can, obviously. But I am excited about Khalil Herbert because this is a guy that was averaging nearly 6 yards a carry last year with David Montgomery on the field too. So Khalil Herbert is going to be a guy that's going to be, you're going to be flirting with him in August, September when it kind of comes down to draft.
Do you think that they might draft a running back in this draft and he could chill on the bench for a little bit? I mean, you look at this, they signed Foreman to a 1-year deal. Khalil Herbert, his contract, he's got this year and next year, and then he's a free agent. Herbert will be 26 at that point. So you think there's a decent chance that they might snag a running back in this draft?
Yeah, I think it's certainly possible. They do, towards the end of the draft or middle of the draft, but I don't see them reaching in the first, second round for any running back in specific.
Okay. Yeah, I think they will as well. I don't think, as you mentioned, I don't think they're gonna. I don't want to start whispering Bijan here, but I do think that they will end up drafting a running back, and he could be, a sit and forget for dynasty players, and he sits on your taxi or you wave at him down on the bench down there for a little while and see if he comes to fruition, because it could end up being the case where he could be the running back for him.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question.
Yes,
we
sir.
tweeted this out yesterday. Would you rather have Miles Sanders or David Montgomery in PPR leagues?
It's got to be Miles Sanders for me. And the only reason being is because, I'm expecting great things from Jameson Williams. I know that you're expecting a comeback, but maybe not as great as what I'm rooting for. But there's a lot more mouths to feed in this Lions offense. And for me, that's why I'm going to take Miles Sanders, is solely because there is no one else. You have Hayden Hurst and Adam Thielen. So in a realistic perspective, Miles Sanders, I think, is going to be a focal focal point for that Panthers offense, and I want a piece of that, because while they're going to be a shitty team, somebody has to do something with the football, and it's got to be Miles Sanders.
Yeah, 62% of our Brainiacs agree with you.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Hey, Brainiac, appreciate that. Thank you for backing me up there. Let's talk about Jamal Williams, Eddie. So, we kind of were just a moment ago, but he was the king of the running back room last year for the Lions. He signed a 3-year deal with the Saints for $12 million with an 8.1 guarantee. He's 28 years old. That's kind of a big contract for an aging running back. Like you said, around 30 years old, you start to see some of these players fall off, and that's wide receivers. So you want to talk about running backs. That's when it gets a little bit more spicy, because that puts in there until 31. He finished as running back 13 last year in fantasy football. What are we thinking? Like, back up to Kamara? Is Kamara going to jail? Like, where are you at with this whole thing, man?
It's interesting because Jamal Williams, he is 28 years old, and at this stage in his career, we know exactly what he is. He's not a pass catching back by any means, so he's going to be on the field first and second down.
He's weird too.
And when it comes to the goal line, but yeah,
he's a strange man.
Yeah. Did you see the video of him going to the Saints and
wearing the
trying to pronounce
Pikachu hat or something?
Yeah, that, and he tried to pronounce bayonnaise or the dough balls that we had in New Orleans.
Oh yeah. Dude, he's a character. He's an odd man. He might have taken one too many hits in the head as a running back running between those tackles, dude.
Yeah, I wonder if he's that goofy outside of the media. Like,
I bet
he's just one of those guys you just want to avoid completely.
You're just like, oh man, Jamal's coming. I'll take the long way to my car.
Yeah, but with Jamal Williams, last season you had mentioned he finished as a running back 13, but that's largely due to the fact that he converted 84% of his carries inside the 5-yard line into touchdowns. When you look at his carries outside of the red zone, he was not very efficient with the ball at all. He's kind of lost a step in his game, and the Lions were smart in not re-signing him because, for what, $3 million more guarantee, they're getting a guy like David Montgomery, who's 2 years younger. He can catch the ball. He can do a little more than Jamal Williams, and he has a little more zig and a zag than Jamal Williams does at this point. So I'm curious to see how Jamal Williams is going to fit in this offense that already has Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill. I don't know who the fuck is going to get the red zone touches there, because we know the Saints have a boner for Taysom Hill and the red zone situations.
That's true. They'll put him in a running back.
Probably. Yeah, they're probably going to look at 40 running back set: Taysom Hill, Jamal Williams, and Alvin Kamara.
I didn't realize how old Taysom Hill is. I think he's like 32.
Yeah, he went to BYU, so he was on Mormon missions, and I don't think he graduated until later.
Yeah, he's an old cat. Yeah, I think this was an insurance piece if Kamara's gone. And I think that's why the Saints, in my mind, did this, because they're like, is he going to go to jail? And if he goes to jail, somebody's got to run the ball. And I don't even know if Mark Ingram's still on the team.
No, he's a free agent now.
Yeah, he's probably going to retire. Maybe probably with the Saints. But it's just, the Saints are just I don't expect much from him this year, if I'm being completely honest. Michael Thomas is probably going to get hurt again. Kamara's probably, I think there's a 50-50 chance he goes to jail. It's just, there's a lot going on. Derek Carr, I don't want to go down the whole rabbit hole today, but I kind of like this for Jamal Williams. He's somebody that you're not drafting in the first few rounds, but if he's there in a later round, you might grab him for just, keepsake and see what happens, because he ended up doing really well with the Lions, and I think the Saints kind of want to capitalize on that a little bit. So the Saints they didn't have an identity last year, and that was really, really difficult. You watch them; they were going through quarterbacks. They couldn't figure out if they wanted to run the ball or be more pass heavy. So it was just a shit show. But I like Jamal Williams here overall. We're gonna move to tier 3, but before we do that, Yeti, we need to talk about March Gladness, baby, because we here at Leather Brains are providing you, the Brainiacs here, a free opportunity to get a NFL signed Javonte Williams jersey. It's free. It's free, baby. That's right. And it's really easy to get this to get entered in to win this jersey. All you got to do, wherever you're listening to us at, give us a rating, give us 5 stars, comment on our stuff, and go retweet our tweet on Twitter. We are very, very aware of who is and who is not doing this stuff. So give us 5 stars, give us a comment, go put the comment in the Twitter. So if you give us a comment on the YouTube video, if you are giving us 5 stars, if you are sharing this stuff, go put it in the comments and you will get entered to win this jersey. And I think there's only like 40 or 50 people entered right now. So it is a free signed NFL jersey of Javonte Williams for week 3 of March Gladness. We're trying to bring a little bit of gladness to all our Brainiacs out there. So go check it out, get involved, and get yourself a free jersey. And now, tier 3 running backs. Yeti, we got Rashad Penny to start this off. So he's kind of like we mentioned, a tier 3. We talked about him already. I don't know if there's anything else we want to discuss here, but Rashad Penny, he's now with the Eagles. I think the Eagles are going to try and sign a running back in the or draft a running back here in this upcoming draft, and we'll touch on that at the very end because I want to talk about some Bijan, baby. But Kareem Hunt, another guy here who is a tier 3 running back. I almost want to put Kareem Hunt as a tier 2, but I think really the difficulty here is where he goes is going to largely determine his value, right? Because currently he's a free agent. I don't know why the Browns didn't trade him last year. You know, he wanted to go get traded and go find a new home. The Browns said no. The Browns didn't really play him at all. And it was probably an insurance piece to make sure that if Nick Chubb went down, they had somebody. But like this last year was kind of the first year where we didn't see like a tandem running back situation with both Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. Could be in part because Jacoby Brissett is a better quarterback than Baker Mayfield. So
who would have thought?
Yeah, who would have thought? I know. So you know that could have played a part, but Kareem Hunt, I thought he still had some value last year. He is a pass catching back. He runs hard, but he is getting older. So I mean, what are your thoughts on Kareem Hunt and his trajectory for fantasy and NFL? So
I got the NFL script.
It
leaked early.
You got it?
Yeah, it leaked early, man.
Congrats,
so on the script, it says that, you know, everybody loves a happy ending, right? In many different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in the
especially people named Deshaun.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Legal or illegal.
Yeah, whatever.
And anyway, Kareem Hunt, you know, it's written in the stars that he's going to fulfill his happy ending by going back to the Chiefs.
He's going home, hometown
in the middle
hero?
of the season. Yeah,
they're going to forgive him for all the shit he did to his girlfriend.
I think it just kind of feels that way, man. Like the Chiefs are going to sign Kareem Hunt and they're going to go on to do great things again. Wow. I fucking hate to say that, but it's probably what's going to happen. That's what the script says. At least.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to get a copy of that from you.
Yeah. Yeti's script, though. I think Kareem Hunt, he's probably smart and waiting not to sign at this point because we know running backs are going to go down in the middle of the season. Mm-hmm. And with a guy like Kareem Hunt, you know, he could probably make himself a little more money by postponing his signing, and he could ask for a few more $1 million, you know, in week 5, week 6, like, hey, we just lost our star running back. Okay. Like, you sign me for $4 million guaranteed right now. Okay. You know, like, I don't see why he feels a need to go out and sign right now when you have guys.
He's like, fuck training camp. I don't want to do that shit again.
Yeah, exactly, man. Like, be smart, preserve your body, work out, train, recover properly, and don't put your body in harm's way if you don't need to. So I think he'll sign with the team in the middle of the season. But watch, he's probably going to sign with the team as soon as we're done recording here.
Yeah, like it's going to be like at the very end. Breaking news, Adam Schefter, Kareem Hunt goes to the Chiefs because he also has the script. I want to talk about Damien Harris. He signed with the Bills on a 1-year deal. We don't have the money to know exactly how much was paid so far, so we can't really speculate on that. So he joins James Cook as the running back for the Buffalo Bills. I don't care about this signing. I mean, I do, but I don't, because in my opinion, I do. But I look at this. I think this is James Cook's backfield. I think especially with this signing, this tells me that it's James Cook. Hear me out. So we saw what happened last year with Singletary. It was Singletary's backfield. But then we started to see a sprinkling, like the little salt man for the meat. We started to see a little bit of salt of James Cook falling into this offense, and they started to get him involved. So They started to get him involved. And traditionally, we know what the Bills are. The Bills have wanted to find a pass catching back. They want to find a dynamic, do it all, run between the tackles, and catch balls out of the backfield. And we started to see James Cook get more involved in this offense as the year progressed. And I stated this pretty early on last year that I think we're going to see this happen, and we saw it happen. And I said we're going to see this happen because Devin Singletary's on a contract year, and they want to see what they can get out of this guy. This contract of them signing Harris tells me that it's James Cook's backfield, because if you look at this, it's a 1-year deal. And look, don't misconstrue what I'm saying. Harris will probably still touch the ball, but so don't think that I'm writing him off as he's going to be a backup, because I do think that he will find some use, but I think he's going to be more of that traditional, between the tackles hard runner, because that's what he was with the Patriots. But we're going to see James Cook be the RB1 on this team.
Really?
That is my take. I think that James Cook, they believe in him enough, and this contract tells me that they believe in him enough to ride him out. Now, the only thing that would change my opinion on this is if they draft a running back in the draft. And they could, there's murmurs. I don't know how realistic it is, because I think there's some other positions that they need to fill more than the running back position at this point for the Bills. But if they do that, that would obviously change my opinion as far as how things are flowing. But as it currently sits, James Cook is the RB1 in this offense, in my opinion.
If I was a betting man, and unfortunately or fortunately for you, I am a betting man.
You are.
So I would bet money that Damien Harris is the RB1 on kickoff. Yeah.
Okay. Let's shake on it.
All right.
We'll do a daddy brains bet here, baby.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it's James Cook.
I think he's going to be the starting running back, because you look at Devin Singletary, small guy. He wasn't a bruiser by any means. And him and Cook are kind of alike in that way. They're shifty, but and they're decent between the tackles, but they're not going to, run you over by any means.
Yeah.
And that's what Damien Harris is, or that's what he was with the Patriots. He was that bruiser that Bill Belichick loved to run into the ground. And I think Damien Harris fits that mold extremely well for Buffalo, obviously. And I'm not writing off James Cook either, but I think they are the perfect complement for each other, because you have a hammer like Damien Harris, and then you have lightning with James Cook, who, you can rotate those guys out, because Cook is shifty. Cook can catch out of the backfield. Whereas Davis, he might just run you over. But it is, worth noting that, Harris, he's missed at least 6 games in 3 of his 4 seasons. So, Harris, he's had issues staying healthy, which could open the doors a little more for James Cook.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll agree to disagree on this one, and we're going to move on to we already spoke about D'Onta Foreman here, but let's pivot back for just a second. Ramondre Stevenson, is he now? He was the running back 1 for New England, right? That's kind of what he took over. He beat out Damian Harris, and he was a focal point. But then they signed James Robinson to a 2-year deal. So this was one that kind of perplexed me. Not this year. I actually like this move for the Patriots, but I couldn't understand why the Jets traded for James Robinson and then didn't use him at all. Because when Breece Hall went down, James Robinson has been an absolute tank for when he was with the Jaguars. I loved him. He was a 3-down back. He could catch it. He could run through the tackles, and he did it very, very effectively. And I was like, damn, this is a great move for the Jets. He's going to beat out Michael Carter and Zonovan Knight. He's going to be the guy. And then he just chilled, and he didn't do anything. And I was like, what the hell's going on here? He was supposed to be the guy. I think it's probably still Stevenson's backfield, but I think Robinson could add some competition to this and make it a little bit more interesting if he's healthy and he's doing the right things and he gets in good graces with old Billy Belichick.
It's another curious move by New England. Like, I don't know, them and the Raiders are having a very interesting offseason, in my opinion, because you signed James Robinson, who, like you had mentioned, he couldn't beat out guys like Zonovan Knight or Ty Johnson. Like, are you serious? He wasn't better than them or didn't look good in practice at all. So that's kind of telling me something there. You could argue that, maybe as a personality or something, but why would the Patriots sign him if he did? I guess I don't know. But the Patriots also do have 2 young running backs that they drafted last year with Pierre Strong, and then I can't remember the other guy's name right now. So in my mind, it's kind of just like a training camp body to kind of replace what Damian Harris was. But with Stevenson, we saw what he can do when it's his offense.
Yeah.
Dude finished as a running back 11 for PPR leagues. Like when he had the backfield when Damian Harris wasn't playing, Stevenson saw 22% of the opportunity share, which would rank him 4th among running backs last year. So I think this is Stevenson's backfield to lose at this point.
Yeah, I would agree with you, but Robinson might be a nice compliment to Stevenson, and that's probably where I see him at best.
Yeah.
I do want him to get in good graces with Bill Belly, though, because I want a resurgence of James Robinson. He's got a cool story. He came from nothing.
Yeah.
He was living in his car. He's working out at Planet Fitness, and then all of a sudden he's a star running back for the Jags. So gotta love those feel good stories. And I'm hoping and I'm rooting for this man to make a more of a splash here in the NFL. Devin Singletary, former Bills running back, signed a 1-year deal with the Texans. What the fuck are the Texans doing? What in the hell are the Texans doing? They have Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce owners were so excited that they finally hit on a running back. The Texans, for once in their life, finally have a decent running back to be able to use since like Arian Foster. They're ready to go. Dameon Pierce, all the shares, sky high, stonks are way up, and then Devin Singletary comes into play. What are you thinking, buddy?
It really hurts Pierce's his productivity, man, because we looked at Pierce last year as he was a late round darling for most guys in fantasy football and in real life and NFL standards. But Pierce, he was a guy who was seeing volume, and not saying he wasn't very efficient with his carries, but this dude saw an immense amount of targets or carries out of the backfield, which is hard to find in the modern day NFL. And now they add a proven guy like Devin Singletary to the mix. That's going to hurt Pierce's value quite a bit for fantasy and NFL production, man. Like, I don't really know how they can coexist. Like, I feel like it's got to be one or the other because they're kind of in that same mold.
They're the same, yeah. And I agree with you. They are in the same mold. They are cut from the same cloth, so to speak, as far as kind of what they have generally been in the NFL thus far. So I don't know if Singletary is just an insurance piece, but like I don't know what the Texans are doing here. You have Dameon Pierce, and you know what he is, and you should be so happy that you have him because he is a very good running back. And you finally, as a former Texans fan, I know the struggles of running back. At one time, Rex Burkhead was your running back. Like you have gone through the slums for years trying to find a guy. You found him, and then you signed Devin Singletary. So fingers crossed for Pierce owners that he is more of just an insurance piece, so to speak, and he will back up Pierce. But it's interesting because Singletary did have a lot of use for the Bills. So I don't know exactly how this is going to play out, but I do think it hurt Pierce a little bit as far as his current value in both dynasty and redraft. So I would say more than anything else, we're going to have to stay tuned and maybe wait for some more reports to come out as far as what this backfield's shaping up like as the offseason progresses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got some other running backs to talk about. Some we'll stop on, and some we'll just note here. I don't think we need to spend an incredible amount of time here, but I do want to talk about Samaje Perine because he signed a 2-year deal with the Broncos with a $7.5 million guarantee. Samaje Perine, baby, he was looking good with the Bengals when Joe Mixon was out last year due to injury. Samaje Perine came in and filled that void wonderfully. Like it was like there was no missing anything. He didn't miss a beat. He came in, he was killing it. And Perine, he really did it all. I mean, he was able to be that pass catching back when the Bengals needed him to be. He was also that between the tackles guy. He was a great backup for Mixon. And I love this move for the Broncos because Javonte Williams is currently questionable as far as when he is going to come back from his knee injury. Will he be ready by week 1? I lean towards probably not, but he could be within the realm of possibility of getting on the field pretty early this year. But I love the fact that they went and got Perine and they signed him to a 2-year deal. Tells me they want to make sure that Vontae is ready. And I think that given what Vontae is and what they know that they have, do not rush him back. And I think Perine is going to fill that role wonderfully. Perine is that buy low running back that I am looking for, that I'm not expecting as far as long-term output. And I would like to see what the reports are for when Vontae's coming back. But he's certainly somebody I'd be targeting if I was in the market for a running back for fantasy purposes, as somebody that I could maybe get by with for the year.
Yeah, and I agree with you 100%. And I don't think he can be like an RB2 in your dynasty leagues, but he could certainly be like a bye week filler. Just because I think his PPR value is going to be through the roof, because we have seen what Sean Payton's offenses look like, and the dude loves his pass catching running back. So, game scripts might favor Perine over Javonte Williams at times. If the Broncos are down by 14 or something, they probably have Perine in the game, mostly due to his pass catching abilities. Not that Javonte can't, but Perine, he looked good doing that in Cincy. So yeah. I think he is a perfect complement to Javonte.
Talking about perfect compliments, Alexander Mattison signed a 2-year deal with the Vikings. So it sounds like he will still be around to back up Dalvin Cook. This is probably a good move for him, because he traditionally has been a backup running back for a couple of years now. So for him to secure the bag and get another 2-year contract to be the backup, and we all know Mattison will be playing some this year because Dalvin Cook is aging and struggling to stay healthy. I like this move for the Vikings. I don't know if we necessarily need to delve too far into it. Do you have anything else you want to talk about with Mattison?
Just watch Dalvin Cook's status throughout the offseason, because he's been rumored to be one of those salary cap casualties. So just stay tuned.
Okay. Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert, these motherfuckers, they both re-signed with the Dolphins for 2 years. It's Jeff Wilson's backfield, in my opinion. And we saw Jeff Wilson when he was with the Niners. He was looking pretty damn good. It was kind of a struggle for him to come to the Dolphins, because it was like, okay, is Mostert going to be the guy? Is it going to be Wilson? But Mostert is getting pretty old, and Wilson still looks like he's got a lot of gas left in that tank. I think he is the running back I would be targeting in this backfield more so than Mostert if I had to choose. And who knows? But, with them signing a 2-year deal, I could also see them. I'm not going to whisper Bijan here, because I don't think it's probably a realistic possibility, but I do expect them to grab a running back in the draft with one of their later picks, just due to the fact that it's either going to be this year or at bare minimum next year. But I think they got to do something else with the running back room here. And so I could see them getting, like, with a 3rd or 4th round pick, maybe snagging a running back. I'm not going to say it's going to amount to much, but if Mostert goes down and then it's just Jeff Wilson, they might need some additional help back there. So, last piece here is James Robinson. We already kind of touched on him, so I don't know if we need to go into too much more of detail there. But let's very briefly, before we get the heck out of here, Yeti, let's talk about Bijan Robinson for just a moment.
Oh, baby.
Okay. Are you ready to do this thing?
Yeah, let's dive into it.
Bijan Robinson, he's in dynasty formats, he is going first off the board. There is absolutely no contention. Everybody who is buying the 101 or selling the 101 knows that you are not selling the 101. You are literally selling Bijan Robinson. He could go to a couple different places, but he is probably one of the most complete running backs that we have seen in a very, very long time. And when I say complete, I mean that he is not only able to run through the tackles and get the work done on the ground, so to speak, but he also can catch the ball, and he does it with ease. He's a very good running back. Where do you think he's going to go? Like, what would be the best home? Like, realistically, like, we can sit here and we can put a wish list of all the teams that we wish he's going to go to. There's rumors that he's going to be a 1st round pick. There's rumors they might wait till the 2nd round, because traditionally 1st round picks are not done for a running back, but we haven't seen a running back of his caliber in a very long time. So there's a chance that he could be a late 1st round running back, or a late 1st pick in the NFL draft, maybe early 2nd. That's where I see him going. So then you kind of start to look at some of the teams that may have that, and maybe he could scoot up to like the late teens for a 1st round pick. I don't know if I necessarily see that happening. I kind of see him as a later round 1st pick. But you start to look at some of these teams and where he might go, and where realistically he would fit into the category of a running back. We talked about it earlier. Playoff Lenny and Kareem Hunt are 2 still big name running backs that are free agents, and depending upon where they sign at could really indicate what teams are in the hunt for Bijan Robinson. One of the standouts for me right now is the Eagles. And we talked about it earlier. The Eagles are somebody that I could see sneaking in and potentially getting Bijan Robinson. However, the Eagles GM has historically never taken a running back in the 1st round. So this would be a big move for them, I think. I think it would make a huge splash in the offense. But they also have some other positions that they need to be filled, especially on their defensive side of the ball, because they lost some big names due to free agency. So, well, I mean, where do you think, like, the Cowboys, we talked about them as well. The Cowboys could be somebody that would be pretty fun. We know Jerry, he's not got a lot of life left in him, but we know that his blood goes down to his pecker pretty quick when we start talking about running backs. So that could be a home for him as well, especially with Zeke being gone.
Yeah, before I dive into like where I think he's going to go, I think you touched on Bijan being a popular guy for dynasty leagues, but it's also worth noting for redraft purposes, if you don't know who Bijan Robinson is, as of right now, people who are doing best ball drafts, Bijan Robinson is a 5th running back going off the board. So by the time redrafts start up, this guy might be going 3rd or 4th off the board. He's only behind McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler, and Barkley at this point, which is fitting because I think Bijan is the best running back that we've seen come out of the draft since Saquon Barkley in 2018. And Saquon Barkley, he was a 2nd round pick, or not a 2nd round pick. He was a 2nd overall pick in that draft class, which I think if you took out the quarterbacks, I think Bijan would definitely be a top 5 pick in this draft just because he is that fucking good. And he's only 21 years old. This guy, the only con with him that, a lot of analysts have put out there is that he just doesn't know when to not take a hit, which if that is his only con as a running back coming out of college, usually we see, he can't catch the ball. He hasn't shown that he can run routes.
Yeah.
But if his only negative is that he can't avoid hits, then fuck, man. Like, I want that guy on my team.
Yeah.
You had mentioned he might be a late 1st round guy, early 2nd round guy, but I don't see him making it past like 15th pick, honestly.
Really?
Because he is that good. If anybody who is high on Bijan, I think they are willing to trade up for him because he's a generational talent that I think could solidify your backfield for the next 4 or 5 years of his rookie contract. So fits that I personally like.
The Bengals.
Philly is
Bengals?
Obviously one of them. Yeah. The Bengals would be another one. And I say that because Joe Mixon, he is one of those guys that could be a cap casualty and he has legal issues, which I don't know what the fuck is going on there.
I don't think anybody does.
Yeah. It's very confusing. There's I feel like a new story that comes out every couple of weeks on Joe Mixon. So hopefully he gets his shit figured out. But if not, he could be one of those cap casualties, which excites me a lot for Bijan because if you look at the Bengals, and I'm just going to go down a little hole. They have tried to keep up with the Chiefs, and I think it's hard to keep up with the Chiefs. What better way to do that than to pound the rock 20 to 30 times a game, slow down the pace of the game, and just let your ground game control those games versus the Chiefs, who are clearly going to be AFC contenders for the next 8 years or however long Mahomes decides to play. So I think Bijan would be a perfect fit for Cincy. So Philly, Cincy, Dallas, obviously, great offensive line. They've been known for the running backs throughout the Cowboys' history. Jerry Jones loves running backs. I think he would be perfect in Dallas. And my last pick, I'll say Atlanta. I like Atlanta because their offensive line is really young and they have a run-heavy playbook already in Atlanta. And while we saw what's the guy's name? Al-Jair. He was their guy last year. I don't think he's anything that special. Honestly, I really don't. I think if you put him on another team, it's just hard for me to see him being productive. I think it wasn't largely due to the volume that he was seeing, that he was exciting, but I don't think he's very effective. Like if I had to pick between him and Bijan, it's all day Bijan.
Yeah, I mean, it's Bijan heads down. But do you think, hands down, excuse me, do you think that there's a possibility that, you mentioned somebody like Dalvin Cook, who is potentially a cut candidate due to his contract. Do we think that Bijan could end up with somebody like the Vikings or the Titans, who have running backs who have a lot of tread that they have already used on their tires, and those tires are getting pretty bare? Like, is that a possibility as well, where they just reload as a top tier running back?
I think it is, but it's hard for me to envision either of those teams picking a running back just because they have so many issues.
Sure.
Like if Bijan went to Tennessee, that would not excite me at all because their offensive line is
garbage,
basically gone, and it's garbage. They have a lot of problems with their offense. The Vikings, I guess, but they're a very pass-friendly offense, and I don't know how I'd feel about Bijan in that role. So hopefully not either of those
Kirko
teams.
Chains, he's on his last year of his contract, and if they don't do something here, they might be in the hunt for a quarterback down the road too. So it could get interesting. But I love your analysis here. We will see what happens with Bijan. I'm excited for him. He is, like you mentioned, he's already a very sought after for fantasy purposes, and whoever lands him in the NFL draft here next month is going to be very, very happy that they did so. And it could change the dynamic of some of their offenses depending upon where he goes. You know, like traditionally you have the Bengals, who they're kind of, I would say, more of an air-esque offense, but they do like to get Mixon involved. But it's always kind of the game flows through Joe Burrow. Perhaps there would be a dynamic shift where you could take some of the pressure off Joey B, because you do have a talented running back at that caliber. So we'll see what happens. But I appreciate your thoughts there. Yeti, before we get out of here, we do just got to let everybody know one last time, baby, it's March Gladness, and we're 3 weeks in. We're giving away a free Javonte Williams signed NFL jersey. It's very, very simple to get entered to win this thing, guys. I'm telling you right now, all you got to do is go to our Leather Brains with a Z Twitter page. Make sure you're following us. If you're not, you're just making a mistake. But go ahead, go there, go look at our pinned tweet, and all you got to do is follow the instructions there. You got to retweet the tweet, very simplistic, and then make sure that wherever you are listening to us at, whether it be YouTube or Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever, give us 5 stars, hit the subscribe button, everywhere. Put a review on there. You can say we're handsome or we're ugly, because I'm not the best. Like Yeti's handsome, but I'm not that great looking. But whatever you want to do, put a review in there, take a screenshot of it, and put it in the tweet and send it to us. Send it to us right on that pinned tweet. Just click, I want to respond to this tweet. You put what you did there, and then you're entered to win, baby. And there's multiple entries allowed, so it is so easy to get involved and support us, and we do greatly appreciate it to get entered in for that free signed Javonte Williams jersey. And then be on the lookout. We got one more week. Next week, we are giving away a free jersey again next week. And I think you guys are really going to like this one. We saved probably, arguably, I would say the best for last. So I think you guys are going to really love that jersey. So stay tuned. Yeti, you ready to get the hell out of here, brother?
Let's go, baby.
All right. And we
are
out.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leather Brains. If you enjoyed the show, please consider subscribing and leaving a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast app and YouTube, as well as following us at Leather Brains on Twitter and Instagram. If you're looking for specific fantasy advice, including draft advice, trade insight, starts and sits, or even if you want our thoughts on your sports bets, please feel free to send us a DM on Twitter for an answer and a chance to have your question featured on a future episode. Again, thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back before you know it.